Thank you all for being here. It's great to see you. I'm Tessa, and I own two businesses in town, Hattie Rex and Lightbox. The first one, Hattie Rex, we're located over on South Wilson across from Naked Noodle. And there we have an in-house jewelry studio where we make personalized jewelry and pet ID tags, and we carry the work of about 25 other local artists. And then my new business is called Lightbox. And Lightbox is a business consultancy where I help small businesses and creative entrepreneurs illuminate the dark corners of business. So I'll talk more about that later, but first I want to talk a little bit about Hattie Rex and how I got started. So this is my little dog Pablo that I had when I was 22, 24. So it was 2007, and I was a high school Spanish teacher living in rural Missouri. And I was a new dog mom, and like many new mothers, I wanted just the very best for my new offspring. And so I wanted to make him a tag. Well, I wanted to find him a tag, and I couldn't find anything that was cool enough, you know? Everything was those like blue fire hydrants that are like machine engraved, unacceptable. So I set out to make one of my own. And so I gathered the materials and I hammered out my first dog tag on a cinder block on my porch. Teaser alert, cinder blocks are not one of the tools that you're supposed to use. But I had a lot of fun doing it and trying to like perfect this technique that was inherently imperfect. So I made another and another and another, and finally all of my friends and family and my own dogs had dozens of tags that looked kind of worse than this one. So that was kind of how I got started. It became my creative outlet after I would get home from a long day of teaching Spanish students in rural Missouri. And I didn't really intend for it to be a business until I realized that I could actually make money at it. So after all my friends and family had all of these dog tags, one of them was like, well, you should set up a booth at the fall festival. And I was like, oh, maybe I will. So I did, and I sold a couple things. And that's whenever I really got hooked on the idea that like I could make money at this thing that I like doing anyway. So that's what I did. I started selling on Etsy in 2007. At that time, nobody else was selling dog tags on Etsy. I was the only one. Now there are 85,000 dog tags for sale on Etsy. Yeah, it's stiff competition. So, and then I eventually moved into making jewelry as well. And then in 2010, I moved to Bozeman. And in Bozeman, I really felt like I found a place where I could have this weird job and still be accepted and be a part of a community. And a couple years after being here, I decided to open my own little retail store. And some of you might know this building. It was over on Babcock. It's where Rare Bird is now. And it was this tiny, like probably half the size of this room. And it was our studio and the retail space. And I was just thrilled. Like it was just a dream come true to like have my own store. It was so cool. But the initial glow eventually wore off, and I started to feel like, oh my God, what have I done? Like I've totally ruined my life. I used to have all of this freedom, and I could do what I want, and I had my own schedule. I could do anything I wanted. And now I'm a slave to this retail store and these hours. And I felt like a prisoner of my own creation. I felt like I couldn't go to lunch, or I couldn't go out of town because of these hours, and I was doing everything on my own. I couldn't go out of town for more than a day without really like busting my ass before I went, and then stressing out so much while I was gone, and like answering emails on the go, and then busting my ass again whenever I got back. So I started kind of drowning in my work, and I started to kind of resent my business because of it. I was counting down the days until my lease was over. I was like, I've got to start over. I don't want to do this anymore. This is too much. But I had just signed the lease, so the number of days until it was over was many. So I figured I have to do something. And at that point, what I wanted to do really was just to be able to keep up. I had a 2 to 3 week turnaround time with like 100 orders in the queue at any time. And so I was losing sales because of it, because I was so behind. And I thought, I don't want to do this. This is too much work. I'm too overwhelmed. And then I started thinking about, what do I want in the long term? And what I wanted was more space to actually be creative and to get back to that part where I loved what I was doing and I loved what I was making. Because at this point in time, I was basically like a one-woman dog tag and Montana necklace factory. And it didn't feel like creativity, and it didn't feel like freedom, and it didn't feel like art. It felt like a factory. So ideally what I wanted was some space to be able to be creative, make one-of-a-kind pieces of jewelry for people and for pets, and then eventually to have some people who could recreate those designs so that I could sell them and make some money. And I wanted a little bit of time to not work every once in a while too. And so at that point in time, I was really in this mindset of, I'm the only one who can do this. And I think that if any of you are solo entrepreneurs, you know that we have this feeling, like this pressure of, I'm the only person who can get this done. Like nobody else can do any of those things. And sometimes it's true, but then you have to start thinking, is it worth it to be that way, to have this business that's so completely dependent upon us? And that if we don't work, we don't make any money at all. And the reason that, and feeling like the only reason that the business does work is because of us. But I eventually had to come to terms with my ego and realize that I could train people to do the things that I didn't want to do or that I didn't have time to do. But the first thing that I had to do was understand what my end game was going to be. So while I was in that little store, I turned 30 years old. And when you hit these milestones, I think we all look backward and we look forward at, what do I want to do next and where am I going to go? And I began to realize, I don't want to be sitting in this 300 square foot studio making the exact same dog tag design dozens of times every week when I'm like 60 or 70 years old. That's not my retirement plan. So eventually I realized that I needed to hire some help. And when I did, it was a total game changer. At that point I had somebody on board who could help me with all of the things that I didn't have to do, like emails and customer service and finish work. And it gave me a little bit more wiggle room in my day. It gave me a little bit of time to not work, and it gave me some time to do the things that I really did want to do. So I started taking a closer look at what could I do that could make this business run more efficiently, and that could grow the business and also give me a little bit more time to be creative and also a little bit more time just for me. And that's what I did. So if you fast forward to now, I don't really participate in the day-to-day operations of Hattie Rex anymore. And it runs without me. It's still going. The sales and the production and the marketing and the social media. Julia does my social media, and she's here. Hi, Julia. It's all done by this amazing team that I have who is amazing, and I feel super lucky to have them. But I want to be careful using the word lucky, because it's not like they all just showed up and they were like, I can do this job, let me help you. I went through a lot of learning curves along the way when it comes to being a manager or a leader, to being a business owner and just realizing how a business runs and the things that you need to do that you don't know whenever you start off by like making a dog tag on your porch and then suddenly you're like, oh, and now I have a business and I'm expected to know how to run it. So all of those things are things that I really had to put effort into learning. And here in Bozeman, we have a ton of resources. On the internet, there's a lot of resources. And so there's tons of ways that you can learn all of those things without having a business degree. So one of the hardest things that I had to learn how to do during all of those things was to learn how to let go of control. That was the toughest one. So whenever you have your own business and you build this like baby from scratch, to have somebody come in and be like, oh, I can take care of your baby. I micromanaged so much in the beginning. I didn't let anybody send an email without me like reading over it to make sure that it was like grammatically correct and that it sounded exactly like I would say it. And then once I started letting people do the production, I was even worse. And finally I realized like, I've been checking every single order that goes out and I don't have feedback on any of them. Maybe I should just say, okay, I trust you, you can do this. So one of the times that was a big like aha moment for me in that, okay, I can let go and control, was I went on vacation, and when I came back, I was expecting that pile of work that would be waiting for me. And I got back and there was nothing. They didn't have any emails, or wasn't like a to-do list of like, only you can do this. And I was like, well, you don't need me anymore? And I should have been like super excited, but instead I was like, but you don't need me anymore. So that's another time I had to have a talk with my ego and realize that I did this on purpose and they don't need me anymore. Now, I know that from an artist's perspective, I probably came about this backwards. I think that for a lot of true artists, for people who just live to create their art form, they might be offended that I, a business person probably, would even call myself an artist. Now, I loved making dog tags, but honestly, what made me pursue it was that I could make money at it. Otherwise, I probably just would have made some dog tags and then, you know, when somebody got a new puppy, made another dog tag. But the money is why I was like, I want to make a bunch of dog tags. And for a true artist, it's not a motivation that you need. It's just a motivation that you have. It's not an option to create it or to not create it. And for some of those people, it's money is the barrier to being able to create it instead of the means to be able to do so. And I like to call that mentality the starving artist mentality, whereas I operate from a working artist mentality. And the starving artist will say things like, well, I'm not a business person, or my brain just doesn't work that way. Or my favorite one is when the starving artist says, well, I don't want to sell out. But I'm a big fan of selling out. Because really selling out means that you can have the time and the money and the mental space to be more creative. And you might be wondering, how does that do that? It's because once you have the money coming in, you don't have to worry daily about how you're going to pay all of your bills. Your mental space isn't occupied in that area. And that's whenever you're able for the first time to really have a balance between business and creativity. Now, my bread and butter used to be selling dog tags on Etsy. Now it is more those Montana Love necklaces. And those two things are not the most creative things to make. But they provide a baseline income that keeps our lights on. And so we keep making them. And people keep buying them. I mean, if people weren't buying them, we wouldn't make them anymore. But it really allowed us to create this system where we make the things that people buy, even though we don't really love making them, so that we can have the time and the space and the money to make the things that we do like to make. It's really a system. So the secret to balancing business and creativity is that you create a system for the business so that you can have the space for the creativity. So if you're too busy trying to muscle your way through the business, then you never have the time or the mental space to be creative because you're always stressing out about not making money in the business or not having enough time to do all the tasks that the business needs you to do. And creativity, we all know, can't be forced. You can't just sit down and be like, now I'm going to be creative and come up with a great idea. At 5:30, I'm going to come up with a great idea. So the way that creativity works is that you make space for it and then it finds you. It's like the little ghost on Pac-Man, and it's like as soon as you turn your back, it's like creeping up on you. And if you look at it, then it's gone the other way. So you have to make the space for it. You have to take time for yourself, whether it's a walk in the woods or laying on the couch or hanging out with your friends, and then it shows up. So we all know we get our best ideas when we're not looking, but how do you stop looking whenever you're still trying to run your business? Well, you set up a system so that the business side takes care of itself, and then you have a little bit left of yourself to be creative. And the systems make the business side run smoothly, it gives you the space, and everything's all happy and good. Now, once I had my systems in place with Hattie Rex, that really allowed me to step away and start helping other small business owners develop their own systems. It's funny how what I really wanted was to be able to make like one-of-a-kind jewelry and have people make reproductions of it for sale. And then once I got to that point, I was like, I want something else now. And I think that's fine. I'm fine with it. So a lot of the people that I spoke to in the beginning of starting Lightbox were struggling with their business in one way or another. And the common thread that I saw throughout it is that people were out of balance with the business and the creativity. So either they spent too much time being creative that their business was kind of non-existent, or they spent so much time on the business side suffering through inefficient systems that were just eating them up, that they didn't have time for creativity, and their mental health as an artist kind of suffered because of it. So here's my high-tech diagram. So on the business side, you have your systems and your processes and money and the security that comes from having those things. And then on the creativity side of things, you have the space to create and you have freedom for exploration. And when you have the security that comes with having the things on the business side, it frees you up for the creativity side to come. And on the creativity side, when you come up with an idea for a new product or a way to market the products you already have, or a demographic that you haven't yet spoken to about your products, or whatever comes out of that, from there you can dump it back into the business side of things, create a system for it, make some money at it, get some security there, and then cycle back over to the creativity side. Just a big circle. So, you might be thinking, well, do I have systems? Well, how do I get systems? What type of systems should I have? So there are a lot of different types of systems, and a lot of them are super simple. On the top side of things, the first type of system you should have is a system for your baseline income. And that can be from another job, like being a teacher or whatever else you might be doing. It could be from a spouse's job, or just whatever it is that allows you to pay your bills and keep going. And then eventually, you want to have some products that sell, so that way you've got some money that comes in there. And you can systemize that as acutely as you want to or can tolerate to, so that you know who's buying your stuff, what are they buying, how often are they buying it, and so that you can just keep selling it to them. And then you move into the soft systems, and those are people-based human processes. And if you are a one-person business, then you have your own soft systems. You have your way that you do things. And you can fine-tune those as well so that they run more efficiently. Or if you have people helping you out, you can have systems in place so that they know what to expect from you. So if you have a retail store, for example, you have a system for what happens when a customer walks in the door. It probably starts off with one of your employees greeting them. And what do they say? And what do they tell them? And what happens next? And then you move into the hard systems. And the hard systems are things that I think most people probably think of when I say systems. Those are things like software and technology. So there is technology out there for every problem that you could possibly have and a lot of problems that you don't have. Scheduling for your employees and your clients, inventory management, invoice management, your sales system, bookkeeping, payroll, online sales, your analytics, advertising. You can get technology for all of them. I love technology. I'm a big fan. but I think sometimes it gets the best of us, and that we get lured in by some technology that's like, I can save you time and make you money, and so you buy it. And then you find another one that's like, I can save you time and make you money, and you buy that one too. But these two things don't talk to each other. And so then your system is high tech, but it also includes a lot of soft systems in between, so you can get this program to talk to this program, so that way you can like print it out and put it in a binder. And it just sometimes makes it inefficient. So I think it can be a good thing with the opportunity to make it a bad thing. So with Lightbox, and what I'm doing there is taking the things that I've learned from having a systems-based approach to a creative business and helping other small businesses develop their own systems. Now at Hattie Rex, we have a lot of systems in place, but the best system that I created, I think, and I think the one that it really allowed me to step away from the business in the way that I did, and the one that I think that every product-based business should have, is our sales and operating system. After 11 years in business, we've had 4 different websites in addition to our 2 Etsy sites, and all of them until this one have been just bad. They were the bad technologies that I warned you about that made more work than what they took care of. And the one that we have now takes care of all of our problems. So it takes care of our sales in the retail store and online, and with our wholesale customers that have minimum orders and special pricing. It's our website and our point of sale system, but it also sells things on social media, and it takes care of all of our inventory across all of those channels automatically. It allows us to do the personalized stuff that we need to do because we sell personalized products. It lets us sell other people's work on consignment and tells us what percentage that we need to pay those people at the end of the month, so that all that we do is click a couple buttons and then they get paid, rather than binders and calculators and math. And it also has all of our shipping and our analytics and our payment processing all integrated in one. And so that's kind of what I do with Lightbox, is I help other businesses get set up on a system similar to that, but catered to their own business's needs. I like to consult on their technologies that can actually help them and help people get away from the have-tos so that they can get into the want-tos. So technically, or what I physically or digitally deliver, is the website and the point of sale system. What I feel like I'm giving people, or what I want to give people, is that balance between the business and the creativity. And what I want to them feel like they have is a little bit more space in their life to do whatever it is that they want to do. Because I don't think anybody goes into business for themselves because they want to work 100 hours a week and stress out constantly. Yeah. So, I think that's all that I have. I would love to talk to any of you who want to individually. I have a little sign-up card here. I'll pass these around. Oh, and I made a little worksheet called 10 Steps to Balancing Business and Creativity. So if you would like to receive one of those via email, then you can just indicate there. Do we have time for questions?
Yeah, we do. Maybe we have questions.
Amy?
Well, can you tell us what your system is? What does it mean?
I use Shopify. It's a fully hosted platform. Mm-hmm.
So I'm just kind of curious, I want to know a little bit more about what you do with Lightbox. Is it just an online thing, or you're working directly with the people, or what is?
It's both. So on the website, I have a lot of, there are a lot of blogs. I have like a pricing guide and a lot of kind of how-to things. I also have an online course that you can access through the website, and it kind of walks you through making your own site kind of side by side. So you'd have 2 screens up. One is the video with me showing you how to do it, and the other side is you doing it. And then I do work one-on-one with, I guess it's done, with companies in town. So different. And some of those have retail stores, and other people are online and sell at trade shows and markets and things like that. So. Yes.
What do you like to do now during your own creative time?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I've been trying to learn how to embroider with really no motivation other than just like, that looks like fun. I've been doing that. I like cooking and reading. I'm pregnant, so I've been creatively growing this baby. And trying to plan all of the things that you do during that time, you know. So I like to travel and read books. And sometimes I still get into the studio and make things. Like if I'm like, I need something to wear with this outfit, then I'll still go in and do it, or new puppies and stuff. But it's nice. It's honestly, I struggled a little bit whenever I stepped away from Hattie Rex with the 40-hour work week mentality. And I was like, am I worthless? I don't go to a job. And then I don't know, it took me maybe like 2 weeks to kind of like get over that, where I just like felt guilty and I was like, I don't do anything. And I realized like I am doing something, like I'm building a whole other business. But it's just a different, like switching from that day to day of like going into the store and then going home to not. It was different. Yes.
So you mentioned that you feel pretty lucky to have this team that is kind of running the business for you. What was the kind of the process to build that team? Like how did you hire? How did you find them?
I will say the team I started out with is not the team that I have now.
Yeah.
It's tough. I started being more particular with hiring. And instead of looking for people who already knew how to do the things that I wanted, I started looking for people who had skills and a work ethic that I could build on. Because our metalsmithing technique is not something that you would learn in like in a school. You know, like I started off with a cinder block and like a hammer on my porch. So people who had a lot of metalsmithing experience would come in and be like, well, this is how you do it. And I'd be like, well, this is how we do it. So I tend not to hire metalsmiths with the exception of interns from MSU. And it's tough because when I started hiring people, I was young. And it's hard as a young person to hire somebody who's the same age as you and then tell them what to do. And I had to get over that. You know, I was like, they need to know what to do. Because if I don't tell them what to do, then they're going to guess, and then I'm going to be mad, and then they're going to wonder what I'm mad about. And you just have to have that open communication where you can give feedback and where you can say, this is exactly how I want it to be. And then if they work for you. Like they expect somebody to tell them, this is exactly how I want this to be. But that was hard for me. So I had a lot of like, my learning curve with being a manager or a boss was pretty rough. And you know, going from like having somebody who would call in and they're sick or they have this problem and this problem, and I didn't want to be a jerk, and I knew them personally because you work in this tiny little space together, and so then to fire them and know that like they need tires on their car or their kid's sick or whatever it is, it's like, well, I can't fire her, you know, she needs tires on her car. So I used to call my dad a lot and be like, I have to fire so-and-so. And he was great. He was the first time I fired somebody and didn't have to call my dad first, I was like, I'm an adult now. But I took some classes, like I took a women's leadership community course here that teaches you just about like interpersonal relationships and how you can relate to people, because it's not just like a strong arm and being a jerk and then they'll listen. You know, I feel like if you want people to respect you and play into your team, then you have to show that you respect them and that you're keeping their interests in mind. As far as my hiring process, I find a lot of my people just kind of through Craigslist and through our networks. Like we send out an email, and I started offering health insurance to my full-time employees and 50% reimbursement on health insurance to part-time employees, and that upped the level of help that I got significantly. And I think that helps me retain people as well. So having some benefits and stuff, which will hurt your profit margins significantly as a small business, but then you don't have the turnover and you've got great people, and I think that that's worth it. Yes?
What kind of books do you like, and do you have any sort of all-time suggestions?
I'm kind of all over the place. I read some like like mysteries whenever I'm really like, I'm not going to use brain today. And then just different business books. I listen to podcasts a lot, like whenever I'm cleaning the house and walking the dog and stuff. E-Myth is a great book to read that is all about systems. And it's kind of long, and the guy, he's pretty long-winded. But it's a great book to listen to talk about just like how you can systemize your business and how you can go from being just like totally overwhelmed to then having everything kind of in place. I think that's probably one of my favorite ones. Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic, her book about creativity and how like ideas will like come and land on your shoulder like a butterfly, and then if you don't like grab it, then it goes to somebody else. I think that's a pretty magical thing to kind of think about. I'm all over the place. I read some baby books now that you're probably not interested in. Yeah, I think that's important to know who your audience is. In the beginning stages of my business, I was really hesitant to raise my prices because I didn't want it to be unapproachable for certain people. You know, I didn't want it to be like, well, you know, if I charge more than $8 for a dog tag, then certain people can't afford it. Like, well, certain people can't afford anything, you know, which maybe makes me sound like a jerk, but I think you have to know who your customer is and who you're selling to, because yeah, your customer isn't everybody. It can't be, not even Walmart.
Along those lines, I mean, how do you face the battle of
selling and not devaluing yourself, meaning like, how do you put a price on it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think first of all, you have to get comfortable with your own prices, which is a hard thing for a lot of people who make these things. You know, you make this thing with your hands, and it's like what it is one thing to you, and you want to find those people who see the value in that. I also think with pricing, it can be very emotional, and it can be, and it should also be very mathematical. You should know exactly how much time and how much materials financially it takes you to build that product, and then build your pricing in if you're going to sell wholesale, if you're going to sell retail, and then that's your bare minimum that you sell it at. So you make sure that the first thing that you're getting is payment back for yourself for the time and the materials you put in, and payment to yourself should you ever sell at wholesale. And then after that, if you want to add value because its perceived value is higher, then you add it there. But I think if you price your products based only on what you feel it's worth or what you feel like people will pay, then a lot of times when you go back and you do the math, you're like, oh, I just like paid somebody to buy this thing. So I think there's a lot with having a handmade business, there's a lot of like money mentality that you have to kind of deal with. What is her name? Barbara Sterney. Her book is called Overcoming Under-Earning, and it's a money mentality book, and it's kind of a worksheet type of thing. And so you'll read it, and then it asks you like, what was money like in your childhood? You know, when you asked your parents for $5, what did they say? And you kind of go through these things, and maybe you cry a little bit because you're like, oh God, thanks, Mom. But that's a pretty powerful one too. And then a little bit more on the like woo-woo side, Therese Skelton. She's a redhead and she's got a big YouTube channels, and she teaches you about like muscle testing and how to like try and figure out what your subconscious thinks that you're worth. It's pretty fascinating. Therese Skelly. I'll think of it when I'm not looking for it. But yeah, I think that's a lot of it is just getting your own head around it. And you don't have to sacrifice. You know, if you're getting to a point where you're like, well, I want to sell this for $100, but people only want to pay $50, so I'm just going to charge $50. Don't charge $50. Find people who will pay $100. Now, there will be a certain threshold at which the market won't bear it. I, for a little bit in the beginning stages of my business, started making dog Christmas stockings, of course. And the time that it took me to make it and the materials that it took me to make it, once I like really did the math and I looked at it, I should have been charging like $60 for this dog stocking. And nobody's going to buy a dog stocking for $60 whenever my dog tags at that time were like $8. And so I just stopped making them because at that point it's like it's not a feasible thing financially to do. So I think that's something to keep in mind too. Good question though.
All right, well, we'll wrap it up. Thank you, Tessa.
Thanks guys. Thank you.